Hello, in this presentation we will be looking at reports within QuickBooks Pro 2018. If you've been following along with us, we will be continuing with the Get Great Guitar problem. If you have access to the backup file, you can restore that by going to the File tab and Open and Restore. We currently have the Open Windows list on the left-hand side. Recommend having that open. The way to open that is go to the View drop-down and Open Windows list. Only thing open at this time is the home page. If the home page is not open for you, then open the home page by going to the Company, drop-down, and Home page. This time we're going to be looking at reports within QuickBooks Pro 2018, just giving an overview of what reports are. Reports, like many things, has more of a specific meaning to QuickBooks in that reports are going to be the end result. Reports are going to be things that will be generated from the data that is typically input from this screen. So everything that's input from the screen, including the bills, the pay bills, the create invoices, the receive payments, the deposits, and so on, will be used to generate the reports. Within those reports, the two main reports being the financial statements, the end result for most financial accounting. When we think of financial accounting, when we think of the end result of what are we doing within QuickBooks, we are creating the two financial statements, the main two financial statements, which will be the balance sheet and the income statement, which QuickBooks calls the profit and loss statement. So those are going to be types of reports within QuickBooks. They're in the reports section. And then all the other reports really are things that typically are going to build on or give more detail to those main reports, the balance sheet and the income statement. What we'll do now is we'll take a look at that end product, some of those end products, some of those reports, and then we'll go back to some of those input items over here later on, and we'll see how these then will be used in order to help us to generate those end reports. And then, of course, we'll go through an example problem and we'll start entering data, always going back from this information to the reports to see what is happening. There's a couple different ways to open the reports. Later on, I'm always going to be using the drop-down. That's the easiest thing to me. I think it's the fastest way to go there. We don't need to have an open window tab in order to do that. And that is just selecting the drop-down, going to the appropriate field, and then you'll have your other list over here in the appropriate field. Now, this can look a little daunting, however, because of all the drop-downs. And depending on different types of computers you're using, maybe the drop-down interface with all these drop-downs is not the ideal center. And it also might be easier just to navigate around on another format. So the other format to look at we'll introduce here is going to be the report center. So if you go to the drop down and just select the report center, it's going to break it down in a nice visual format here. And that'll give us a good format because it gives us the same options in essence as the drop down on the left hand side. But then it gives us a visual format and it gives us a lists format. So typically I like the lists format, but if we don't really know what report we're looking for, the visual format over here with the 4 squares is really helpful. I'm going to maximize the report center over here by selecting this maximize. A couple nice other options within the report center. Obviously when we run the report, we'll just run it with this icon here, and that would run, in this case, the profit and loss report, which is in the company and financial. We can also list the more info item here, which is we can't really find in the drop down, and that'll give you a little bit more info. It gives you the visual again, it gives you a little description. How much money did my company make or lose over a specific period of time? That being the description for the profit and loss. Closing that back out. We also have the favorite item here, and if we select the favorite item, then it should show up in our faves over here, our favorites, and we should have that item here. If we unselect it, then it should be removed from the favorite items. So if we go back to the standard, that could be useful in order to have the favorites. It'll give us a little quicker time to use that, so that's a helpful feature. And then we have the help feature over here. We can go through the learn more about this report with the help feature. And that will give this dialog box, and we can go through this information and search through the dialog box for any particular report. Closing this back out, you'll note that we do have the tabs up top. We jumped to the favorites just a second ago, but we also have the memorized tab And if we memorize the report, then we can put it here, and again, that could save some time, which is nice. We've got the favorites, which we looked at. We put one there, and then we took it out of there. And then we've got, and that could save some time as well, to just have those reports that we just use all the time. And if we're looking at some kind of abstract reports, great place. On the memorized report, if we're putting together a report that's a bit different, and we want to make sure that it's there all the time and know where to go instead of recreating it all the time, great place to have it. Recent, we're going to have the recent reports here, things that have happened recently. And contribute. These are reports that are generated by Intuit, and they have the rating down here. So we have a profit and loss by month, quarterly profit and loss. So these are going to be kind of, I guess, some recommended type of reports that are going to be in the contributed items. We will be working mainly with the standard section over here in the standard section. And within the standard section, then we have all of these subcategories on the left side. So you could go through all these subcategories and generate these reports. The main reports, the balance sheet, the profit and loss, will be in the company and financial right there. The main report that you want to have all the time, that's going to be needed every time you make the financials, is going to be this profit and loss. So if we generate that first, we can select this icon here and generate this report. The data, I'm going to have a beginning and ending date. So I'm going to select tab. I'm going to say 01/01/21. January 1st, 2021. This is going to be the year we will be working in. That's what we have to do in a problem like this is basically pick a year that is not the current year to work through these. And we're going to go through 12/31/21. Note this is the easiest and fastest way to type in the date rather than put it in dashes or anything else like that. And then once you select tab, it selects 12/31/2021. So here's the profit and loss report. Again, QuickBooks sees it in the reports section, even though we might call it a financial statement. This is the financial statement to us. I mean, if we were to think about it in terms of accounting, we call these part of the financial statements, and we would call this financial statement the income statement. QuickBooks is going to find it within the reports, just like all the other reports that we generate with the data, and it's going to call it a profit and loss. So you got to kind of keep that terminology in mind. If you're talking to your CPA or your tax preparer, they're probably comfortable with the profit and loss at this point, QuickBooks being such a popular thing, but they're probably going to call it an income statement, and they're probably going to call this financial statements when we're talking about these two main reports. This, of course, having the income and the expenses, and our net income, we'll talk more about it later. Go back to the reports on the open windows and take a look at our other main report, which you have to scroll down a bit. You got to go down quite some ways scrolling down to all the different types of profit and loss reports that you can go through to see these. And we got the income and expense reports all the way down to the graphs reports, and then you will finally see a subsection saying balance sheet and net worth. That's what we want. That's the other main report. It's almost faster to get that by going to the drop down company and financial and go into the balance sheet report. It almost certainly is faster. However, if you had this in the in this list view, it might be fast in that area as well. And you could put it into the favorites by selecting this item here. But we'll click on this. We're going to run this report and take a look at what it looks like. Note it only has one date here because it's as of a specific point in time. So we're going to say this is as of, we'll make it 12/31/21, tab, December 31st, 2021. This is the other major financial statement which we find within the reports section, that being the balance sheet, that having our assets, liabilities, and equity. We'll go more into the balance sheet and how it works later, but this is just an overview of where to find it. These are the two reports, balance sheet, profit and loss. You almost want to have those open all the time. Whenever you get in the practice of this, whenever you enter something, whenever we enter something into the system, into the home page, whether it's an invoice, whether it's a receivable, whether it's a bill, whether it's a pay bill, we want to then go back and forth between here and these two financial statements and see if we understand what is happening. And the better we do that, the better we'll understand how these things work, and the better we'll be able to understand how to set these things up through the lists that will set those up. Now let's go and look at some of the other reports we have. I'm going to go back to the Reports Center here. Now we'll let you go through some of these other reports. We won't take a look at all of them, but some of the main ones that we'll be working with will be in the Customers and Receivables section are the Accounts Receivable reports. We have an Accounts Receivable Aging report, and we got an Accounts Receivable Detail report, and that's going to really back up who owes us money. We could say who owes us money by how past due are these. We could say who owes us money by the detail. If we scroll down, we can see that we also have some graphs there. And if we keep scrolling down, you'll see a section called Customer Balance Detail. Also a useful report. And that'll give us the accounts receivable by customer in essence. And so let's run that report and take a look at that. So we'll say run the report. And we could change the date, but I think it defaults to the most current data that is there if there is no date chosen. And let's check that. If we see that 10,974 and we go back to the balance sheet here, we then see the 10,974 in receivable. So this is really backing up the balance sheet. Like we say, most of the other reports are really going to support these main two financial statement reports, the balance sheet, the profit and loss. Going back to the customer balance detail, and I'm going to close this back out. And then we'll go back to reports, pick one other section just to get an idea. You can go through these and get a better feel for all this information. The sales information, job time, vendors. Let's take a look at vendor reports. And same idea, we'll have the aging, how old it is in terms of who we owe. Scrolling down just to get an idea of these. We'll look more at these reports later. But if we scroll down, we get the vendor balance detail. Same kind of idea. If we run the report, it's going to support, once again, the balance sheet. So we only have this one item here in terms of vendor that's owed at this point. If we go to the balance sheet, 1,200 should be a liability. I'm back to the balance sheet in the open windows, by the way. Back to the balance sheet, open windows. We go down to liabilities. Here's the accounts payable. There's the 1,200. So that's just to demonstrate. We're going to go back to the vendor. There it is there. Back to the report center. That's just to demonstrate that some of these are going to be, they're really supporting those balance sheet and income statement reports. The customer who owes us money, who do we owe money to, the vendors, two sections, very important, very reports we run often. Purchases reports here, we've got the inventory. If we have inventory, also a very useful area to have. We'll take a look at that more in the future. We have the employees and payroll. If we run employees and payroll, this is going to be an important area as well. We can have a lot of detailed reports, and QuickBooks has a lot of different options with the payroll reports, which are great. And then we have the banking reports and the accounting and taxes. This has some of the stuff that you may not be as familiar with. Most people, probably normal business folks, might be staying away from the accounting and taxes stuff because it has things like debits and credits on the trial balance. But it's a really good area to go to. It's got the general ledger, and this is really where you get all the detailed stuff. So if you really want to get reports that actually show you the detail of what is happening, this is where we have to go. The main report that accountants will work with in terms of a summary will be this trial balance. So if we were accountants and we knew debits and credits and we were comfortable with them, rather than having the balance sheet and the income statement, you may just want to have this trial balance open. If you're in accounting and you want to see what's going on with every transaction, every time we do something to the home page, we may want to have this trial balance open and the other two reports, or instead of them two, and see what is happening to this trial balance every time we enter an invoice, every time we write a check, every time we enter a bill. Then we have budgets. We'll take a look at that later. And then lists report, customer phone lists, customer contact lists. That's an overview of the reports, what the reports look like. Most of the time, when we go to the reports, we will be going to them through this drop-down section, through these items here. I think it's a little bit quicker, but this is a great option to have. Remember that what the options here are in terms of memorizing reports, having the favorites, and some of those options within the report center.